As you settle deeper into comfort, allow your mind to drift toward an ancient wisdom that has quietly sustained human flourishing for over 2,000 years. Imagine a philosopher named Zeno, observing the natural world with profound attention, rivers flowing effortlessly, trees bending gracefully, seasons turning without resistance. In these simple observations lies a revolutionary truth. Living in agreement with nature creates a smooth and harmonious flow through life, dissolving the constant friction that characterizes human suffering. As you settle deeper into comfort, allow your mind to drift toward an ancient wisdom that has quietly sustained human flourishing for over 2,000 years. Imagine, if you will, a philosopher named Zeno of Citium, walking through the bustling streets of Athens, observing the natural world around him with profound attention. He watched the rivers flowing effortlessly to the sea, the trees bending gracefully in the wind, the seasons turning without resistance or complaint. In these simple observations, Zeno discovered something revolutionary, a fundamental truth about how to live without the crushing weight of stress and turmoil. This core idea, which became the foundation of Stoic philosophy, whispers to us even now in the quietness of this moment. Living in agreement with nature creates a smooth and harmonious flow through life. Not nature in the sense of forests and mountains, though those are certainly part of it, but nature in the deepest sense, the fundamental laws and patterns that govern existence itself. When you align your life with these natural principles, when you move with the current rather than against it, something remarkable happens. The constant friction that characterizes so much of human suffering begins to dissolve. The resistance, the struggle, the exhausting fight against reality, these gradually fade away. Zeno understood that most people exhaust themselves chasing after things that lie beyond their control. They desperately grasp for wealth, status, pleasure, and approval, as though these external circumstances hold the keys to a good life. But in doing so, they create immense suffering for themselves. They become slaves to fortune, tossed about by circumstances like a ship without a rudder. Instead, Zeno offered a different path, one that asks us to prioritize virtue above all else. Virtue, you see, is the only thing that truly belongs to us. It is the only thing that cannot be taken away, that cannot be stolen by circumstance or fate. Your character, your integrity, your commitment to doing what is right and true, these are eternally yours. This gentle reorientation of priorities transforms everything. When you stop measuring your life by external outcomes and instead focus on cultivating virtue, on becoming a person of integrity and wisdom, the foundation of your peace becomes unshakable. The storms of life may still come, but you are no longer standing on sand. You are anchored to something solid, something true, something that cannot be swept away. As you breathe slowly and deeply in this moment, consider how this principle might reshape your own relationship with the inevitable ups and downs of existence. Now let your attention turn toward the 4 cardinal virtues that the Stoics identified as essential guides for a fulfilling life. These are not abstract ideals floating somewhere in the clouds, but rather practical virtues that can be cultivated and strengthened through deliberate practice. The first is wisdom, the ability to understand what is truly good and what is truly harmful, to see through illusions and false beliefs, to perceive reality as it actually is. Wisdom is like a light in the darkness, illuminating the right path forward even when uncertainty surrounds you. The second cardinal virtue is justice. This is not merely about following rules or laws, but about understanding your proper role in relation to other people and the world. Justice is about treating others with fairness and compassion, recognizing the fundamental humanity in every person you encounter. It is the virtue that reminds you that we are all part of a larger whole, that your actions ripple outward and affect the web of relationships that connects us all. When you act with justice, you contribute to the harmony and well-being of the community in which you live. The third virtue is courage, not the dramatic courage of rushing into danger, but the quiet, steady courage to do what is right even when it is difficult, even when it goes against popular opinion or personal comfort. Courage is the virtue that allows you to face challenges without flinching, to persist in doing what you believe is right regardless of the obstacles before you. It is the strength to be yourself, to speak your truth, to act according to your values even when the world pressures you toward compromise. Finally, there is self-discipline, sometimes called temperance or moderation. This is the virtue of restraint, of understanding your desires and being able to direct them toward what is genuinely good and healthy. Self-discipline means not being enslaved by your appetites or impulses, but rather being the master of your own impulses. It is the virtue that allows you to enjoy the good things in life without becoming dependent on them, without allowing them to control you or diminish your character. Together, these four virtues form a complete framework for living well. When you cultivate wisdom to understand what is truly good, justice to treat others rightly, courage to do what is difficult, and self-discipline to moderate your desires, you create a life that is not only more peaceful but also more deeply fulfilling and authentically meaningful. As your eyelids grow heavier and your breathing becomes more rhythmic, consider this profound insight from Seneca, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers. No one truly proves themselves without adversity. This statement, simple as it may sound, contains within it a revolutionary understanding of how we grow and develop as human beings. Challenges, difficulties, and hardships are not obstacles to the good life. They are the very means by which we develop the strength and character that make life good. Without resistance, without something to push against, how would our muscles grow? Without difficulty, how would our character develop depth and resilience? Think of challenges as the forge in which courage is tempered. When life presents you with obstacles, with situations that require you to persevere despite difficulty, these are not punishments. They are invitations to develop the virtue of courage. Seneca is telling us that adversity is not something to be feared or avoided at all costs. Rather, it is something to be embraced as an opportunity for growth, for proving to yourself the strength that lies within you. Every difficulty overcome, every challenge faced with wisdom and courage, becomes evidence of your capacity to endure, to persist, to remain true to your values no matter what circumstances arise. This understanding creates what Seneca called untroubled perseverance, the ability to continue moving forward with calm determination, even in the face of hardship. It is not the absence of difficulty that brings peace, but rather the development of the inner resources to meet difficulty with equanimity and wisdom. As you drift further into relaxation, let this truth settle gently into your consciousness. Your challenges are not punishments, but invitations to become more fully yourself, to develop the depths of character and courage that make life worth living. Allow these ancient truths to accompany you into sleep, where they will continue to work quietly within your mind, reshaping your understanding of how to live with grace and resilience. As you settle into the comfort of this moment, allow your mind to drift toward an ancient wisdom that has soothed troubled souls for over 2,000 years. Imagine yourself sitting in a quiet garden, the gentle breeze carrying with it the teachings of philosophers who understood the deepest sources of human suffering and peace. There exists within the philosophy of Stoicism a foundational principle so elegant, so simple in its profundity, that it has the power to transform the very texture of your inner life. This principle is known as the dichotomy of control, and it speaks to something you have always intuited but perhaps never fully articulated. Picture a vast landscape stretching before you, a landscape of everything that exists in your world. Now imagine drawing a line through the very center of this world, dividing it into two distinct territories. On one side of this line lies everything within your direct control. These are your thoughts, those private conversations you have with yourself in the quiet hours. These are your intentions, the purposes you set before acting. These are your judgments, the meaning you assign to events. These are your desires and aversions, what you reach toward and what you turn away from. Most importantly, these are your actions, the deliberate movements of your body and the words that emerge from your mouth. This territory belongs entirely to you. It is your domain of sovereignty. On the other side of the line lies everything beyond your control, the weather that comes without warning, the words and actions of other people governed by their own thoughts and intentions, your health and the whims of fortune, your reputation shaped by the opinions of others, the outcomes of your efforts which depend on countless variables beyond your influence, the circumstances of your birth, your family, your position in society. Even much of what happens within your body operates beyond your conscious direction. This vast territory stretches infinitely, and it has never belonged to you, though you may have spent your life trying to claim it. The Stoic masters recognized something revolutionary in this division. Suffering arises not from what happens in the territory beyond your control, but from your resistance to this reality. They understood that you suffer when you demand that the uncontrollable world conform to your preferences. You suffer when you pretend that fortune is your servant, when you believe that your happiness depends on outcomes that depend on countless other forces. This insight is like a weight lifting from your shoulders as you breathe deeply. When you align your focus exclusively with what lies within your control, your thoughts, your judgments, your actions, you free yourself from the exhausting futility of struggle against what cannot be changed. A Stoic student does not fret about whether others will respect them. They focus instead on being worthy of respect through their actions and character. They do not demand that illness pass them by. They focus on maintaining virtue and dignity regardless of their health. They do not insist that they succeed in their endeavors. They focus on bringing their full effort and wisdom to the task, then releasing attachment to the result. This is not resignation or passivity. Rather, it is the most practical and powerful approach possible. When you stop wasting your mental and emotional energy on trying to control the uncontrollable, that energy becomes available for mastering what truly is yours to master. Your thoughts become clearer, your decisions become wiser, your resilience strengthens because you are no longer fighting against reality itself. Now, as your breathing deepens and your body grows heavier, consider how this wisdom applies to the very stresses that keep you awake. Worry, that constant companion of the racing mind, is your attempt to control outcomes through thought alone. Anxiety is your resistance to uncertainty beyond your control. Resentment is your demand that others should have acted differently. Regret is your refusal to accept that the past cannot be changed. All of these forms of suffering become less compelling when you truly understand the dichotomy of control. They lose their grip on you. But there is another profound mechanism through which Stoicism works to calm the troubled mind, and it relates to the power of perception itself. Your perception is one of those precious things within your control, perhaps the most precious of all. The Stoic philosophy teaches that a challenge is only what you perceive it to be. This is not to deny reality, but to recognize that reality contains multiple possible interpretations, and the interpretation you choose has more power over your experience than the raw facts themselves. Consider how a great obstacle might appear to one person as a terrible catastrophe, the end of possibility, a reason to despair. Yet that same obstacle appears to another as an opportunity for growth, a test of character, a chance to develop resilience and wisdom. The external circumstance is identical, yet the experience differs completely. This is the power of perception. Your mind is not a passive recorder of what happens, it is an active creator of meaning. The Stoics understood that you can reframe any challenge through this lens. When difficulties arise, you can ask yourself, what strength am I being asked to develop? What wisdom can I gain from this? How can this adversity make me more capable, more compassionate, more virtuous? In making this shift, in choosing to perceive growth opportunities rather than threats, you transform stress into motivation. The same nervous energy that would have created suffering instead fuels your engagement and determination. Your body and mind, no longer flooded with the chemistry of fear and panic, can function at their highest capacity. And finally, there is the practice of radical acceptance of the present moment, which is perhaps the deepest entry point to inner peace. Your mind has an extraordinary capacity to escape from what actually is. It can dwell in the past, replaying conversations that cannot be changed, rehearsing resentments, wondering about roads not taken. It can project into the future, imagining scenarios that may never come to pass, spinning anxious narratives about what might go wrong. In these escapes, enormous energy is wasted. Your worry cannot change yesterday. Your anxiety cannot prevent tomorrow's uncertainties. Yet these mental excursions steal from you the only moment you actually possess, this present one. When you practice radical acceptance, you surrender the futile attempt to escape from what is. You turn toward this moment exactly as it presents itself, and you ask, what is within my power right now? What action, what thought, what attitude can I bring to this present reality? This acceptance frees an enormous reservoir of energy that was bound up in resistance and denial. That energy is now available for your highest purposes. You can think clearly about solutions instead of spinning in worry. You can regulate your emotions because you are no longer fighting against your actual circumstances. You can find moments of peace and even beauty in this present moment, precisely because you have stopped demanding that it be different. As these teachings settle into your consciousness like gentle snow, allow your body to relax more deeply. You have received ancient wisdom designed to ease the burden of human struggle. These principles are not mere intellectual concepts, but invitations to a different way of being. Let them work within you as you drift towards sleep. As you settle deeper into the comfort of this moment, allow your mind to drift toward a profound ancient wisdom that has cradled the hearts of philosophers for nearly 2,000 years. There exists a beautiful concept, whispered through the corridors of time, that invites you to transform your relationship with the very fabric of your existence. This concept is called amor fati, a Latin phrase that translates to the loving of one's fate. Imagine, if you will, a river flowing through a vast landscape. The water does not resist the rocks in its path, nor does it fight against the bends and curves of the terrain. Instead, it flows with grace, adapting, moving, embracing each obstacle as simply another part of its journey. This is the essence of amor fati. It is an invitation to stop resisting the currents of your life and instead to love them, to embrace them, to see them not as interruptions to the life you wanted, but as the very life you are living. In our modern world, we are surrounded by challenges that seem endless. Work pressures mount, relationships require constant navigation, uncertainties about the future weave themselves into our daily thoughts. We often find ourselves asking the question that echoes through sleepless nights: why is this happening to me? Yet the Stoics understood something deeper, something more peaceful. They recognized that every single event that occurs in your life is, in fact, inevitable. It has already woven itself into the tapestry of reality. When you practice amor fati, you are not accepting defeat or resignation. Rather, you are engaging in an act of profound wisdom and freedom. You are acknowledging that while you cannot always control what happens to you, you possess complete control over how you respond to it. Each obstacle becomes not a barrier to your happiness, but rather an opportunity to exercise your greatest strength, your ability to choose your perspective. This shift is transformative. When a setback occurs, instead of spiraling into frustration and despair, you pause. You breathe, you ask yourself, how can I love this? What can this teach me? How might this lead me toward becoming the person I wish to be? This practice builds resilience in ways that external protections never could. True resilience does not come from avoiding difficulties, but from developing such a profound relationship with acceptance that difficulties lose their power to disturb your inner peace. As you lie here in the darkness, let your mind rest upon this thought. Every challenge you have faced has already happened, and you are still here, still breathing, still capable of growth. Now gently shift your awareness to another practice that has guided seekers toward peace for centuries. This practice carries a name that might initially seem dark, yet within its shadow lies profound light. It is called memento mori, remember that you must die. In our culture, we often avoid this thought, pushing it away as morbid or depressing. Yet the ancients understood something we have largely forgotten. To remember your mortality is not to invite despair, but to welcome clarity. Imagine yourself in the quiet of early morning before the world awakens. In this stillness, you contemplate the simple truth that your time on this earth is finite. You do not know how much remains. It could be decades, or it could be far less. This is not meant to frighten you, but rather to illuminate what truly matters. When you hold this awareness in your heart, something remarkable happens. The petty frustrations that seemed so important begin to fade. The argument you had yesterday, the comment that stung your pride, the worry about what others think, all of these diminish in significance. Memento mori is a meditation on perspective, a gentle guide toward what the Stoics called the view from above. Imagine floating above the earth, seeing your city, your office, your home from a great distance. From this vantage point, your worries appear smaller, not because they are insignificant to you, but because you can see them in the context of something far larger. Your mortality becomes not a source of anxiety, but a teacher of wisdom. This practice does not lead to despair. Rather, it leads to a beautiful prioritization of what truly matters. When you remember that your days are numbered, you become more present with the people you love. You become more genuine in your interactions. You stop postponing the experiences that bring you joy. You release your grip on trivial concerns that seemed so pressing moments before. As you rest here in this darkness, allow this thought to settle over you like a warm blanket. Every moment you have is a gift, and this gift is enough. Finally, let us explore a practice that may seem counterintuitive for those seeking peace, yet which paradoxically brings about deep tranquility. This practice is called premeditatio malorum, the premeditating of evils, or more gently translated, the contemplation of potential adversity. Rather than avoiding thoughts of difficulty, this ancient practice invites you to meet them, to welcome them into your quiet reflection, to consider them deeply. Picture a master craftsperson preparing for a great work. Before they begin, they do not simply hope that everything goes perfectly. Instead, they imagine what might go wrong. They consider where mistakes might occur, where materials might fail, where unexpected challenges might arise. By contemplating these possibilities beforehand, they are not inviting negativity. Rather, they are preparing their mind and spirit so that if these challenges do arise, they are met not with shock or despair, but with readiness and wisdom. When you practice premeditatio malorum, you are engaging in a form of mental rehearsal that transforms potential obstacles into opportunities for growth. You might imagine facing a setback at work, and rather than spiraling, you consider how you would respond with courage and creativity. You might contemplate a difficult conversation with someone you love, and practice in your mind how you would approach it with compassion and honesty. By the time these situations arise, if they arise at all, your mind has already explored the terrain. You are no longer a stranger to the challenge, you are prepared. This practice does not predict the future with certainty, nor does it invite worry. Instead, it is a form of compassionate preparation. It allows you to approach life not as something that happens to you, but as something you co-create through your thoughtful engagement and wise preparation. Your obstacles become not enemies to be feared, but teachers to be learned from, architects of your own becoming. As you drift further into the peace of this moment, let these three practices settle into your consciousness like sediment finding its place at the bottom of a still pond. Amor Fati invites you to love your fate. Memento Mori reminds you of what truly matters. And Premeditatio Malorum prepares you to meet life's challenges with wisdom and grace. Together, they offer a path toward the stress-free, peaceful existence that your weary heart has been seeking. As you settle into the comfort of this moment, allow your mind to gently turn inward, away from the rushing currents of daily life. We're going to explore together some ancient wisdom that has soothed the minds of philosophers for centuries, wisdom that remains remarkably relevant to the quiet struggles we all face in the darkness of our thoughts. Imagine, if you will, sitting in a garden at twilight. The day is ending, and with it comes a natural quieting of external noise. This is the space the ancient Stoics understood so deeply, the space between stimulus and response. In our modern lives, we are constantly bombarded with stimuli. A notification on our phone, a critical comment from someone we care about, an unexpected change to our plans. Our immediate instinct is to react, to feel the spike of emotion, to let our minds race ahead into worry and anxiety. But what if there were another way? The Stoics discovered something profound. There exists a sacred pause between the moment something happens and the moment we respond to it. In this pause lies our freedom. This is the gift of mindfulness of the present moment. When you practice mindfulness, you are essentially training your mind to observe your thoughts as though you were watching clouds pass across an evening sky. You notice them, you see their shapes and colors, but you don't grab onto them. You don't try to hold them or push them away. You simply let them be. This practice of observing thoughts objectively is like developing a new relationship with your own mind. Instead of being swept away by every thought that arises, the worry about tomorrow, the regret about yesterday, the fear of the unknown, you create distance between yourself and these mental events. You become the observer rather than the observed. When anxiety whispers its urgent messages, when fear tries to convince you that disaster is imminent, you can pause and ask yourself, is this thought absolutely true? Is this thought helpful? What evidence do I have? This simple act of questioning, of observing rather than immediately believing, transforms your relationship with your thoughts entirely. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic philosopher and Roman emperor, understood this intimately. Despite his position of power and the immense pressures of his office, he turned to this practice religiously. Each evening he would reflect on his day, not with harsh judgment, but with curious examination. He would notice the moments when he reacted impulsively, when anger or pride took hold, and he would study these moments like a naturalist studying specimens in nature. Not to punish himself, but to understand himself. This practice of self-reflection and mindfulness allowed him to process the anxiety and emotional turbulence that comes with bearing great responsibility. When you engage in this kind of gentle self-examination, something remarkable happens. The anxiety that seemed so overwhelming, so all-consuming, begins to lose its grip. By examining your emotions objectively, by turning toward them with curiosity rather than fear, you discover that emotions are not commands you must obey. They are weather patterns passing through the landscape of your consciousness. They have texture and temperature and movement, but they are not you. They are not permanent. They do not define your essential nature. As you lie here in the darkness, practice this. When a worrying thought arises, pause, notice it, ask yourself what it is really about. What is the core fear beneath it? By bringing awareness to it, you transform it from an invisible force that controls you into something you can understand and gradually release. This brings us to a truth that the Stoics held as central to their entire philosophy, a truth that can be profoundly liberating as you drift toward sleep. Nothing in this world is permanent. Everything we hold, everything we cherish, everything we fear losing, all of it is temporary. This is not a cause for despair, but rather for peace. When the Stoics contemplated loss, they did not see it as destruction. Instead, they viewed it as a return, a borrowed thing going back to its source. You did not own your possessions, they were merely entrusted to you for a time. Your relationships, your health, your youth, all of these were gifts on temporary loan from the universe. This perspective is deeply calming to contemplate as you relax into sleep. Consider a river. The water that flows past you today is not the same water that will flow past tomorrow. The river is constantly returning its water to the greater cycle of nature. Yet we do not say the river is diminished or destroyed. We say the river continues its eternal nature. You too are part of this great cycle. The possessions you thought you owned will return to matter. The roles you play will eventually pass to others. Even your body, which feels so intimately yours, is borrowed from the earth and will return to it. What remains, what cannot be taken from you? This is the Stoic insight that preserves inner peace in the face of loss. Only your mind is truly yours. Only your capacity to choose your response, to maintain your integrity, to act with virtue, these are the only things you genuinely own. No external force can take these from you without your consent. Loss, from this perspective, is not a tragedy, but a return to the natural order of things. When you release attachment to permanence and recognize that everything flows and changes, you find yourself standing on solid ground. You find peace. As you settle deeper into rest, carrying these thoughts with you like stones in your pocket, remember, you are practicing an ancient art. You are joining a lineage of philosophers and seekers who found in these truths a pathway to tranquility. Your mind is your own. The present moment is all you truly possess. And in letting go of what was never truly yours to keep, you discover a freedom that no circumstance can touch. Rest now in this peace. As you settle deeper into comfort, let your mind wander into the gentle landscape of Stoic wisdom, where the ancient philosophers understood something profound about the human heart that we are only now beginning to rediscover in our modern world. Imagine for a moment that your emotions are like the weather, sometimes stormy, sometimes clear, sometimes gray and uncertain. The Stoics did not believe in banishing this weather entirely, as if you could simply wish away the clouds or command the rain to stop falling. Rather, they understood something far more nuanced and beautiful. That mastery of emotional control means learning to stand in the storm without being swept away by it. This concept, known as apatheia, is perhaps one of the most misunderstood teachings in all of philosophy, often confused with the modern word apathy, which suggests a cold indifference to life itself. But apatheia is something entirely different. It is not the suppression of emotion, not the hardening of your heart into stone, not the numbing of your inner world until nothing touches you anymore. Rather, apatheia represents the cultivation of a refined emotional intelligence, the capacity to feel deeply while maintaining the clarity of your rational mind. Think of it as learning to experience emotions without being controlled by them, the way a skilled sailor feels the power of the wind but is not blown off course by it. When you practice apatheia, you are developing the ability to acknowledge that a negative feeling has arisen, perhaps fear, perhaps anger, perhaps despair, and then with gentle awareness to prevent that feeling from overwhelming your rational responses and causing you to act in ways that contradict your values. This is profound work, the kind of work that happens quietly, almost invisibly in the spaces between stimulus and response. When something difficult happens in your life, there is that crucial moment, sometimes lasting only a heartbeat, where you can choose how to respond. The untrained mind reacts automatically, like a wooden doll with strings being pulled. But through apatheia, you learn to lengthen that moment, to expand it like a deep breath, creating space where your reason can illuminate your path forward. You feel the emotion fully, you honor its presence, but you do not allow it to dictate your actions. This is the ancient secret, resting there in the stillness of your mind as you drift deeper into relaxation. Yet the Stoics understood that emotional mastery was not about eliminating feeling altogether. They recognized something that modern psychology is only now validating, that there are emotions that serve us well, emotions that arise from rational understanding and clear thinking. This is where the concept of eupatheia enters, like a gentle companion in the darkness. Eupatheia refers to the rational positive emotions that naturally blossom when your mind is aligned with wisdom and virtue. These are not the blind, unthinking emotions that most people experience. They are not the hollow hope that clings to impossible dreams, nor the paralyzing fear that imagines catastrophes that may never come to pass. Instead, eupatheia is the quiet joy that arises when you know you have acted with integrity. It is the deep gratitude that flows through you when you recognize the gift of simply being alive, of breathing, of having the capacity to learn and grow. It is the contentment that settles in your heart when you have done what lies within your control and have released what does not. When you cultivate eupatheia, you are training yourself to experience emotions that are grounded in reality, rooted in truth, and aligned with reason. These emotions do not mislead you or carry you away on tides of illusion. Instead, they carry you gently forward, like a river that knows its destination and flows naturally toward it. As you rest here in this moment, consider how different your life might become if you could consistently choose gratitude instead of complaint, if you could feel joy in simple things instead of anxiety about future uncertainties. This is not about forcing yourself to feel positive emotions when circumstances are difficult. Rather, it is about training your mind to recognize the deeper truths beneath the surface of events. Gratitude and joy, when truly understood, are not naive emotions that deny hardship. They are profound recognitions of what genuinely deserves your appreciation and what brings true value to existence. And here lies the beautiful secret that connects all these threads together. This entire process of emotional mastery cultivates something extraordinary within you, emotional intelligence. As the Stoics understood deeply, emotional intelligence is not something that happens to you. It is something you actively develop through consistent practice and self-awareness. It begins with the quiet work of knowing yourself, of observing your own patterns with compassionate honesty. When does anger arise in you? What triggers envy? Where does fear take hold? These questions are not meant to shame you, but to illuminate the landscape of your inner world. With this self-awareness as your foundation, you gain the remarkable capacity to choose your responses rather than being enslaved by them. This ability transforms not just your personal peace, but your influence in the world around you. Think of the greatest leaders and the wisest people you have encountered. Do they not seem to possess this quality of responding thoughtfully rather than reacting blindly? When disappointment comes, they do not rage. When injustice appears, they do not collapse into despair. When others succeed, they do not shrivel with envy. Instead, they pause, they breathe, they consider, and then they choose a response that aligns with their deepest values. This is the gift that Stoicism offers to you as you sink deeper into this peaceful state. It offers the possibility of emotional freedom, not freedom from feeling, but freedom from being controlled by feeling. It offers the cultivation of emotions that truly serve your well-being and wisdom. And it offers the development of emotional intelligence that allows you to navigate your life with grace, regardless of the circumstances that arise. As your breathing slows and your mind grows quiet, rest knowing that these ancient truths are always available to you, waiting patiently for you to discover them anew each moment. As you settle deeper into comfort, let your mind drift toward a profound practice that has calmed the greatest minds throughout history. Imagine for a moment that your thoughts are like clouds passing through an endless sky. They appear, they move, and they eventually drift away. This is the essence of cognitive distancing, a practice that the Stoic philosophers understood with remarkable clarity and wisdom. When you find yourself caught in the grip of a stressful thought, the Stoics teach us something revolutionary. Rather than being consumed by that thought, rather than letting it define your moment and your peace, you can step back, you can observe it, you can create distance between yourself and the worry that has taken hold. This is not about denying your thoughts or pretending they do not exist. No, it is something far more subtle and powerful than that. Imagine you are sitting in a theater watching a play unfold upon the stage. The actors move, they speak, they create drama and tension. But you, the observer in the seat, you remain separate. You can appreciate the performance without being consumed by it. This is the gift of cognitive distancing. When anxious thoughts arise, and they will arise, for this is the nature of the human mind, you can choose to observe them rather than become them. You can watch them with curiosity, the way you might watch those clouds drift across the sky, without grasping, without resistance, without the tension that comes from trying to push them away. This practice works because of something fundamental about our emotional nature. Our distress does not come from the thought itself, but from our relationship to the thought. When we struggle against a worry, when we try desperately to suppress it or convince ourselves it is not real, we only strengthen its grip. We give it energy and attention. But when we step back, when we view the thought objectively, something shifts within us. The emotional charge diminishes. The power it held over us begins to dissolve like morning mist in gentle sunlight. The Stoics understood that we cannot always control what thoughts arise in our minds, but we can control how we relate to those thoughts. We can develop the capacity to observe without judgment, to notice without attachment. This is a skill like any other skill, and it can be cultivated through gentle, consistent practice. Each time you notice yourself caught in worry, you have an opportunity. You can pause, you can breathe. You can step back and simply observe, allowing calm responses to emerge naturally from this place of distance and clarity. As your breathing slows and deepens, consider now another transformative practice of the Stoic tradition. Gratitude. This simple yet profound word contains within it the power to completely reshape your inner landscape. In our modern world, we are often pulled toward what is missing, what is wrong, what we lack. The mind naturally gravitates toward problems, toward threats, toward what needs to be fixed. This served our ancestors well when survival depended on spotting danger. But in our contemporary lives, this tendency often becomes a source of quiet suffering. The Stoics teach us to deliberately shift our attention. Rather than focusing on worries about the future or regrets about the past, we can turn our awareness toward what already exists in our lives. Right now, in this moment, you are breathing. Your body is warm and supported. You are safe. These are not small things. These are fundamental gifts that we often overlook in our endless striving and planning. When you cultivate gratitude, you are not denying difficulties or problems that exist. You are simply choosing to expand your awareness. You are training your mind to see the fuller picture. Yes, there may be challenges, but there are also countless positives that sustain you every single day. The kindness of people who care about you, the beauty of nature, the miracle of your own consciousness, your ability to think and feel and experience this existence, your comfortable bed surrounding you right now. The simple comfort of rest. This shift in attention is like adjusting a lens. When you focus a camera on distant mountains, you cannot see the flowers at your feet, but the flowers are still there. When you deliberately focus on what you appreciate, what you are grateful for, the worries do not disappear, but they shrink in proportion. They become one part of a much larger picture rather than consuming your entire field of vision. And as this happens, a tranquility settles over your mind. A sense of contentment emerges. Not because your external circumstances have changed, but because your internal focus has shifted. You are learning to see what was always there, waiting for your appreciation. Finally, as you drift further into this meditative space, consider one more remarkable practice from the ancient Stoics. They understood something about challenge and growth that feels both harsh and deeply wise. They recommended cold water, the shock of discomfort, as a training ground for the mind. Before you turn away from this idea, understand what they were truly offering. The Stoics knew that stress is inevitable. Life will bring discomfort, but they also knew that our relationship to discomfort could be transformed. By deliberately choosing small, manageable moments of discomfort, you train yourself to remain calm in the face of greater challenges. A cold shower, brief and intense, teaches your body and mind something invaluable. It teaches you that you can endure. It teaches you that discomfort is not the same as harm. It teaches you that you have control over your reactions, even in moments when your impulse is to resist. This practice builds tolerance the way exercise builds muscle. Each time you choose to remain calm in the face of something uncomfortable, you strengthen your capacity to do so. You prove to yourself that you are resilient. You regain sovereignty over your reactions. You move from being a creature that is tossed about by circumstances toward being a person who can choose their response, regardless of what happens. This is the deepest form of freedom, and the Stoics understood it well. As these three practices settle into your awareness, the cognitive distancing that allows you to observe your thoughts, the gratitude that redirects your attention toward appreciation, and the tolerance that comes from embracing small discomforts, feel yourself becoming calmer. These are not just ideas. They are tools tested by centuries of practice, waiting for you to discover their power. And now, as your eyes grow heavy and your body sinks deeper into rest, let yourself drift peacefully towards sleep, knowing that these ancient wisdoms are available to you whenever you need them. As we settle deeper into this moment of quiet reflection, let us explore three profound truths about Stoicism that have guided countless souls toward peace and resilience. These are not merely abstract ideas, but living practices that you can weave into the fabric of your being, starting tonight. Imagine, if you will, the weight of stress as a stagnant pool of water. When we remain still, when we become passive observers of our own anxieties, this pool grows darker and more turbid. The Stoics understood something fundamental about the human condition that modern science has only recently begun to validate. Movement is medicine. When we speak of getting active, we are not necessarily talking about frantic exercise or restless movement. Rather, we are speaking of purposeful, directed action that channels the restless energy of our minds into productive pathways. Think of the ancient Stoic philosophers packing through gardens and contemplative spaces, their feet moving rhythmically against stone and earth. This was not mere wandering. This was a deliberate practice, a way of transmuting the turbulent energy of worry into the gentle momentum of purposeful motion. When stress festers within us, it is because we have trapped it, given it nowhere to go. It swirls endlessly in loops of rumination, gathering strength and density with each passing moment. But when we engage our bodies, when we move with intention, something remarkable happens. Physical movement becomes a vessel for our anxious energy. As your body flows through space, as your muscles engage and your breath deepens, the nervous system begins to recalibrate. The energy that was once consuming itself in worry now has an outlet, a purpose. You might take a gentle walk, allowing your feet to connect with the earth, feeling the subtle shifts in your weight and balance. With each step, imagine that you are not simply moving through space, but moving through your stress itself, allowing it to transform and dissipate. The Stoics recognized that this was not about achievement or intensity. It was about the sacred principle of directing your vital force productively rather than allowing it to corrode you from within. When you engage in purposeful action, you reclaim agency. You move from the passive state of being overwhelmed to the active state of engaging with your challenges. This is the profound alchemy of Stoic action philosophy, the conversion of mental turbulence into physical momentum and ultimately into peace. And now let us turn to a companion truth that may seem surprising in its power. The Stoics, those serious philosophers often portrayed as stern and unyielding, held a secret appreciation for laughter. They understood that humor, when wielded with wisdom, is a formidable tool against the relentless pressure of stress. Imagine laughter not as frivolous entertainment, but as medicine, ancient, potent, and profoundly healing. When we laugh, something shifts within us. The tight bands of tension that encircle our chest and throat begin to loosen. Our perspective, which had become narrow and fixed by worry, suddenly expands. Laughter creates distance between ourselves and our problems. It does not deny the reality of our challenges, but rather it shows us that we are larger than our difficulties. We are beings capable of joy even in the midst of struggle. The Stoics understood that chronic stress gains its power partly through our grim acceptance of it. We treat our burdens with such seriousness that they become heavier with each passing moment. But when we inject humor into our relationship with our challenges, we introduce a lightness that was previously absent. This is not about making light of genuine suffering, but about recognizing the absurdities that often accompany our anxieties. It is about finding the unexpected humor in the human condition itself. Consider how laughter shifts your physiology. Your breathing becomes fuller and more rhythmic. Your nervous system receives a signal that danger has passed, that it is safe to relax. Endorphins flood your system, creating a natural sense of well-being. The Stoic strategy, then, is not to suppress or deny humor, but to embrace it actively as a form of medicine. When you can laugh at your own predicaments, when you can see the cosmic joke in your circumstances, you have already begun to transcend them. You have gained the perspective that stress desperately tries to prevent you from obtaining. And finally, we come to perhaps the most practical and immediately applicable wisdom, the principle of divide and conquer. Imagine standing before a mountain so vast and high that you cannot fathom climbing it. The mere sight of it fills you with paralysis. But what if you were to turn your gaze to the immediate path before your feet? What if you were to focus only on the next step, the very next foothold within your reach? This is the genius of breaking overwhelming stress into manageable parts. The Stoics recognized that our minds are not equipped to handle the totality of our problems all at once. When we try to confront everything simultaneously, we become frozen. We cannot act because there is too much to consider, too many variables, too many potential outcomes. But when we divide our stress into smaller, discrete components, something miraculous happens. The overwhelming becomes manageable. The paralyzing becomes actionable. Imagine a situation that feels crushing in its totality. Now mentally divided into its component parts. What is the very first thing you could address? Not everything, just one small piece. By focusing your attention and energy on this single, manageable element, you transform your internal state from paralysis to purpose. You move from the helpless feeling of being buried beneath a mountain to the empowering sensation of taking one deliberate step forward. This principle is deeply aligned with the Stoic virtue of wisdom and practical judgment. It acknowledges that while we cannot control everything, we can control our focus. We can choose what to address first. We can break the chains of overwhelm by refusing to look at the entire chain at once, instead examining only the link directly before us. As you practice this throughout your days and weeks, you will find that many problems that seemed insurmountable become manageable, and many that you feared never need to be faced at all. These three truths, active engagement, channeling stress productively, laughter as a form of healing medicine, and the practical division of overwhelming challenges into manageable pieces, form a trinity of Stoic wisdom that has endured for centuries. As you rest now, allow these principles to settle gently into your consciousness, knowing that they will continue their quiet work as you move towards sleep and beyond. As you settle deeper into comfort, let your mind drift toward a gentle truth that the ancient Stoics understood with profound clarity, the transformation of energy itself. Imagine, if you will, a river flowing with tremendous force and power. Without direction, without channels to guide it, this water crashes chaotically against rocks, creating turbulence and chaos. But when that same powerful current is directed through carefully constructed channels, it becomes a source of nourishment, of beauty, of purposeful movement. This is precisely what happens when we discover a hobby that truly captures our attention and affection. The Stoics recognized something fundamental about human nature that remains as true today as it was 2,000 years ago in ancient Rome. We are beings of energy and focus. This energy, this vital force that animates our days, does not simply disappear. It cannot be destroyed or eliminated. Instead, it must be channeled somewhere, directed toward something. When we are caught in the grip of stress, when our minds circle endlessly around worries and uncertainties beyond our control, we are channeling all of this precious energy into suffering. We are pouring our vitality into the very stressors that exhaust us, creating a painful feedback loop that seems impossible to escape. But here is where the wisdom emerges, gentle and profound as twilight settling across a quiet landscape. When you discover a hobby, an activity that genuinely absorbs your attention and brings you authentic joy, you create a new channel for that energy. Perhaps it is the meditative rhythm of painting, where your hands move almost of their own accord across canvas, where colors blend and transform beneath your touch. Perhaps it is the quiet focus of woodworking, where the grain of the wood speaks to you, where each tool mark becomes a small conversation between your intention and the material world. Or perhaps it is gardening, where you work in partnership with the earth itself, planting seeds and watching them transform week by week into something living and beautiful. When you engage in such an activity, something remarkable happens to your nervous system. Your breath naturally deepens, your shoulders, perhaps tight with unconscious tension, begin to relax. The constant mental chatter that usually fills your awareness quiets, replaced by a gentle focus on the present moment. This is not distraction in the harmful sense, not an escape from reality. Rather, it is a redirection of your consciousness toward something that is within your control, something that brings genuine satisfaction. The stress does not disappear because you have ignored it, but because you have starved it of the attention it feeds upon, while simultaneously nourishing yourself with something genuinely good. The Stoics called this the art of living in accordance with nature and reason. They understood that productivity and well-being do not emerge from fighting against ourselves, but from understanding ourselves deeply and working with our nature rather than against it. Your mind requires engagement, your hands require purpose, your spirit requires the satisfaction of creating something, mastering something, or pursuing something that matters to you. A hobby provides all of this simultaneously. Now, as your eyelids grow heavier and your breath becomes more rhythmic, consider another gateway to peace that the ancient philosophers cherished deeply, the profound comfort and wisdom found within the pages of books. Imagine yourself in a quiet room, perhaps with soft lamplight, holding a book in your hands. There is a particular magic to this moment, is there not? The weight of the pages, the subtle scent of paper and binding, the visual landscape of words arranged before you. But the true magic lies deeper, in what happens to your consciousness when you enter into genuine reading. When you read philosophy, you are not simply absorbing information. You are engaging in a conversation that spans centuries. Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations not for publication, but as personal reminders during his darkest moments as Emperor of Rome. 2,000 years later, his words reach across time to touch your mind and heart. Epictetus, who began life as a slave, encoded profound truths about freedom and choice in language that still rings with authenticity and wisdom. When you read these words, you are drawing from a wellspring of perspective that has been tested by human suffering and emerged refined, like gold purified through fire. Books offer something precious during times of turmoil: perspective. When you're caught in the immediate grip of stress, your mind tends to catastrophize, to magnify problems until they seem to fill your entire world. Reading philosophy gently reminds you that others have faced terrible circumstances and found meaning, dignity, and even peace within them. You learn that your current worries, while real and worth addressing thoughtfully, are perhaps not as overwhelming as they feel in this moment. The book becomes a gentle companion, a voice speaking truth in the darkness, inviting your mind to expand beyond its immediate anxieties. Moreover, the act of reading itself is inherently soothing. Reading requires focus, yes, but a gentle kind of focus. It engages your mind fully enough that the usual anxious thoughts have no space to intrude. Your mind becomes absorbed in another world, another perspective, another way of understanding. Meanwhile, your body relaxes, your breathing deepens, and a sense of calm begins to permeate your being. This is why reading is such powerful stress relief, not as escape, but as genuine healing. And finally, as sleep draws ever closer and your thoughts become softer and more fluid, consider the third pillar of this Stoic path to peace, the continuous building of knowledge and understanding. The Stoics believed that much of our suffering stems not from events themselves, but from our judgments about events, from our stories and interpretations. When something difficult happens, we typically react immediately with fear, anger, or despair. But what if instead you possessed a deeper understanding of how events actually work, how they connect to broader patterns, how they fit into the larger structure of existence? Knowledge is the antidote to reactive stress. When you understand the mechanisms of something, when you see how it actually functions beneath the surface, it loses much of its power to frighten or disturb you. A person who understands the natural cycles of weather, who knows that storms are temporary expressions of atmospheric patterns, experiences storms differently than someone who sees them only as chaotic threats. A person who understands economics sees market fluctuations differently than someone who panics at every news report. A person who understands human psychology and communication sees relationship challenges differently than someone who takes every conflict personally. Continuous learning then becomes a form of self-control and self-protection. Each book you read, each concept you master, each new understanding you gain becomes a tool for your mind. It becomes part of the lens through which you interpret reality. And with each new lens, each new framework for understanding, you become less reactive, less subject to the tyranny of immediate emotional responses. You develop what the Stoics called prosach, or mindfulness, the ability to observe your thoughts and reactions without being immediately enslaved by them. As sleep begins to claim you, carry these three truths gently into your rest, that your energy, when directed toward hobbies you love, becomes a source of nourishment rather than torment, that books and philosophy offer perspective and peace during turmoil, and that knowledge itself is a form of freedom, reducing your reactivity and deepening your resilience. Sleep now, knowing that these ancient truths are your companions in the night. As you settle deeper into comfort, allow your mind to drift toward one of humanity's most profound gifts, the ability to distinguish between what truly matters and what merely demands our momentary attention. This evening, we're going to explore a gentle truth that the ancient Stoics understood with remarkable clarity: the art of not sweating the small stuff. Imagine for a moment standing on the shore of a vast ocean. The waves roll in endlessly, some gentle and small, others more forceful, but eventually every wave returns to the sea, every single one. This is the essence of what the Stoics call recognizing life's transience, understanding that all things, no matter how urgent they seem in the moment, are fundamentally temporary. A delayed email response, a critical remark from a stranger, a spilled cup of tea on your favorite shirt. These are waves that appear, disturb the surface of your consciousness, and then inevitably recede back into the depths of time. The Stoic philosophers understood something that modern life often obscures from us. Our emotional energy is finite and precious. When we invest our feelings into minor irritations, we're essentially spending a portion of our life force on things that will soon cease to matter. Think of your emotional energy as a precious resource, like candlelight in a vast darkness. If you scatter that light across 1,000 small annoyances, the flame grows dim and weak. But if you protect that light, reserving it for what truly illuminates your path, it burns steady and strong. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, would remind himself during difficult moments that he was observing temporary phenomena. A person who cuts you off in traffic, a boss who seems unreasonable, a friend who cancels plans, these are all manifestations of the human condition, fleeting actors on the stage of existence. By recognizing this transience, the Stoics weren't advocating for apathy or detachment from life. Rather, they were suggesting something more subtle and beautiful: accept what is happening while releasing the resistance to it. As sleep begins to call to you, consider how liberating it feels to let go of small frustrations. Notice how your body relaxes when you cease the mental struggle against minor inconveniences. This is the gift of recognizing transience. The weight you've been carrying dissolves because you've realized it was never truly heavy. It only seemed so because you were gripping it tightly. Now, as the day draws to a close, we arrive at a practice that bridges the gap between action and reflection, the Stoic habit of journaling. This is not merely writing words on a page. It is an act of profound self-examination, a conversation with your deepest self in the quietness of evening. Marcus Aurelius, the powerful Roman emperor who could have spent his evenings in luxury and distraction, instead chose to sit with pen and paper, dissecting the events of his day. He knew something essential: the mind, left to wander in darkness, will often spiral into worry and rumination. But when we bring the light of conscious reflection to our experiences, something remarkable happens. The chaos organizes itself into clarity. Imagine your mind as a river during a storm, turbulent, muddy, its waters churning with debris. When you sit down to journal in the evening, you're allowing that river to settle. As the waters become still, the sediment naturally sinks to the bottom, and you can see clearly once more. This is what journaling does for stress sources. It separates the truly important concerns from the mental clutter that has accumulated throughout the day. When you journal about what stressed you, something unexpected occurs. The act of putting pen to paper forces your mind to move from vague, anxious feelings to specific, identifiable problems. A general sense of unease transforms into concrete thoughts you can examine and address. Perhaps you're stressed about a conversation that went poorly. As you write about it, you discover that what's really bothering you isn't the conversation itself, but your interpretation of it. You realize you've assigned meaning that may not be accurate. In that moment of realization, the stress begins to release its grip on you. Moreover, through journaling, you clarify what actions you actually need to take. Some stressors dissolve once you acknowledge them. They were never truly problems, merely ghosts your mind had created. Others transform into actionable steps. By writing them down, you're transferring them from the endless loop of your anxious mind onto the page, where they can be handled rationally. This is the Stoic genius. Instead of lying awake at night, replaying worries in your mind, you've externalized them and begun the work of addressing them with calm deliberation. As you contemplate journaling this evening, feel the peace that comes from releasing mental burdens. Your journal becomes a trusted confidant, a space where all your concerns can be heard and understood without judgment. And as you set down your pen, you set down your worries with it, at least for the night. Yet the Stoic practice doesn't end with evening reflection. there is another sacred time, the morning before the day has yet taken hold of you, before decisions demand your attention and pull you in various directions. Each morning offers a fresh canvas, untouched by the complications of the day ahead. The ancient Stoics, particularly Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, understood that how we begin our day shapes everything that follows. They practiced what we might call a morning reflection, a deliberate pause before action, a moment of quiet consultation with one's highest self. This practice involves asking yourself a deceptively simple question as you contemplate the day ahead. What would the wisest, most virtuous version of myself do in this situation? It's a question that reaches beyond logic and into the deepest part of your being where your truest values reside. When you practice this morning reflection, you're essentially creating a buffer between impulse and action. Before you respond to a challenging email, before you face a difficult conversation, before you encounter frustration, you've already decided in a calm moment what your principles demand. You've consulted with your wisest self when that self isn't clouded by emotion or pressure. You've armed yourself with intention. This is not rigid dogmatism. Rather, it's the freedom that comes from clarity. A ship that knows its true north can navigate any storm. A person who has reflected on their deepest values can navigate any challenge with grace. The decisions made from this place are not reactive, they're principled. They're not desperate, they're calm. They're not self-serving, they're guided by virtue. As you prepare for sleep now, imagine tomorrow morning, that quiet hour before the world makes its demands. In that space, you'll sit with yourself and ask what the best version of you would choose, and in that asking, you'll find the answer. You'll move through your day guided not by fear or impulse, but by the quiet wisdom of your own deepest knowing. Let this vision of intentional living settle into your mind as sleep approaches. Release the day, knowing that tomorrow you'll greet it with clarity, that you'll examine your stress with honest reflection, and that you'll let small troubles pass like waves returning to the sea. Rest now, knowing that wisdom awaits you in both the morning and the evening hours. As the day draws to a close and the world around you grows quiet, there exists a gentle practice that the ancient Stoics understood would transform not just your sleep, but the very quality of your waking life. This practice is known as the evening review, and it is far more than a simple recounting of what happened during your day. It is a sacred pause, a moment of stillness where you invite yourself to reflect with compassion and honesty upon the actions you have taken, the choices you have made, and the lessons quietly waiting to be discovered in the fabric of your experiences. Imagine, if you will, sitting in the soft glow of candlelight or the gentle dimness of evening, your mind beginning to settle like dust particles finding their place in still air. The evening review invites you to journey backward through the hours that have passed, not with harsh judgment or critical eyes, but with the patience of a gardener observing their plants to understand what helps them flourish. The Stoics recognized something profound that many of us forget in our modern rush. That reflection without judgment is one of the most powerful tools for genuine growth. When you engage in this evening review, you are not seeking to punish yourself for mistakes or to bask in pride over accomplishments. Rather, you are adopting the stance of a careful observer, a student of your own life. Perhaps during the day you spoke words in anger that you later regretted. Rather than spiraling into shame, the Stoic approach invites you to pause and ask gently, what triggered this reaction? What do I learn about myself from this moment? How might I respond differently tomorrow? This is learning without the weight of self-judgment, wisdom emerging naturally from honest reflection. Think of it like a river flowing over stones. The river does not judge the stones it encounters. It simply flows around them, over them, learning their shape and adjusting its course accordingly. In the same way, as you reflect on your day's actions, you are learning the contours of your own character, understanding where you might need to adjust, where you might flow more smoothly toward the person you wish to become. The evening review becomes a conversation with yourself, conducted in the language of curiosity rather than criticism. As your mind grows heavier with the approach of sleep, this reflective practice naturally settles your nervous system. There is something deeply calming about the act of processing your experiences consciously rather than letting them swirl unresolved in your subconscious mind. When you take time to examine what happened, to extract its lessons, and to release judgment, you are essentially tidying up the rooms of your mind, preparing them for the restful night ahead. And as you drift deeper into contemplation, consider the second principle that the Stoics so carefully cultivated: the seeking of enjoyment in moderation, the pursuit of pleasure only when it aligns with virtue. In our world of endless stimulation and constant enticement, this might seem like an invitation to a gray, joyless existence, but this would be a profound misunderstanding of what the Stoics truly meant. Imagine an exquisite meal shared with a dear friend. The Stoic does not deny themselves this pleasure, rather they experience it fully, but always with an awareness of balance and purpose. The pleasure is not sought for its own sake as an escape or a distraction, but as something that enhances their connection to virtue, to beauty, to meaningful human connection. The key distinction is that pleasure should serve your well-being and your character, never undermine it. Consider how stress and distraction often arise not from pleasure itself, but from the frantic pursuit of pleasure, the endless chasing of the next dopamine hit, the next sensation to fill an emptiness within. When pleasure becomes divorced from virtue, when it is pursued as an end in itself rather than as a natural accompaniment to a well-lived life, it becomes a master rather than a servant. It exhausts you, distracts you from what truly matters, and ironically, leaves you feeling more empty than before. The Stoic approach is gentler and far more sustainable. Imagine yourself sitting with a warm cup of tea on a cool evening. The warmth in your hands, the subtle aroma, the gentle flavor, these are genuine pleasures, but they are enjoyed not as frantic grasping but as simple appreciation. They are part of a larger whole in which you also have chosen solitude for reflection, time for meaningful thought, connection to something larger than yourself. The pleasure serves this greater purpose, it does not detract from it. This is how moderation prevents the stress and distraction that plague so many modern lives. When you align your pursuit of enjoyment with your deeper values and virtue, you move through life with a sense of coherence and peace. There is no internal conflict, no guilt, no endless craving. There is simply the natural satisfaction that comes from a life in harmony with itself. And as you contemplate this further, as your body grows heavier and more relaxed, allow yourself to rest in the third and perhaps most liberating truth that Stoicism offers, that life is not about perfection, but about progress. This is not a race toward some distant finish line where you will finally become the person you wish to be. Rather, life itself is the process of becoming, a continuous unfolding of self-improvement through daily practice, through small choices, through the gentle persistence that weathers all setbacks. Think of a river carving through a canyon over thousands of years. It is not perfect, it winds and meanders, sometimes flowing backward before moving forward again. Yet through its consistent, patient movement, it shapes the very landscape. This is the Stoic vision of life. Each day offers you the opportunity to practice virtue, to make choices aligned with your values, to learn from whatever comes your way. When you stumble, when you make mistakes, when life seems to push against your plans, you are not failing at perfection. You are simply encountering the raw material through which progress happens. The setbacks you face are not interruptions to your progress, they are the very substance of it. The Stoics understood this deeply, and in understanding it, they found profound peace. They could face difficulties without despair because they knew that difficulty itself was where growth lived. Each morning brings a fresh opportunity to practice, to improve, to become slightly wiser, slightly more virtuous, slightly more resilient than the day before. As you prepare now to sleep, let these truths wash over your consciousness like gentle waves. The evening review has prepared your mind for rest. The moderation you have sought in your pleasures has brought harmony to your day, and the knowledge that life is progress, not perfection, has released you from the exhausting burden of demanding flawlessness from yourself. Tomorrow, you will wake and practice again. And in this gentle, persistent practice, you will discover that the stress-free life the ancient Stoics promised is not something distant and unreachable, but something that grows within you with each passing day. As you rest with these timeless principles gently settling into your consciousness, remember that the path to peace is not found in fighting against the currents of life, but in moving gracefully with them. Let these ancient truths be your quiet companion through the night, a soft reminder that stress loosens its grip when you align yourself with what truly matters. Close your eyes now and drift into the restful knowing that wisdom has always been here, waiting patiently for you.